with us. This is a town hall meeting being hosted by our Water Advisory Committee and by city staff. I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting. We're specifically going to be talking about Shavano Park Water and not SAWS water. I mean, we have no authority over SAWS, so if anybody is in Shavano Creek, Bentley Manor, et cetera, this will not apply directly to you. So I'd like to welcome our mayor, at least one city council member. We have a couple of members of our Water Advisory Committee up. Myself, I chair the committee, have that privilege. Tommy Payton is the vice chair. Sean Fanning, Jason Beck, Steve Fleming, and Sam Bakey are also members. Frank Urbanek is our supervisor of our water system. And of course, you know our city manager. At least I hope you do. So if we go to the next slide, this is our agenda for the evening. We want to talk a little bit about our purpose, our background, what we have in the way of a little bit of a problem or an issue, some cost estimates and financing options and ways to recover that cost. We talk about the Shavano water fees. We're going to do a comparison between what we do in our Shavano Park water system and how SAWS handles things. Talk about a way ahead, and then have a question and answer period. We would prefer, if you can, please hold your questions to the end. Okay, so we really want to make sure that we continue to have a good water future here in Shavano Park. We think we're reasonably well positioned at this point, but we have some shortcomings that we would like to address. If you've watched any news recently, you can't help but see all the cities that have had water problems. A lot of those are cities that have draw their water from surface water, and when you see a lake dry up, you know the water's basically gone. We're fortunate that we draw our water from the Edwards Aquifer. So here in Shavano Park, we draw 100% of our water from the Edwards Aquifer. So our purpose today is to talk about our future needs, to share the recommendations that the Water Advisory Committee is making, and seeking your feedback. We think we need a potential water acquisition fee that would be hopefully a temporary fee that would be just for the purpose of recovering the cost that it takes to purchase additional water rights. Talk about how much water rights we think we need and how to fund those. So let me just talk for just a second about water. The city of Shavano Park has plenty of wells. We can physically pump all the water we need. That's not an issue. Storage of it is not an issue. The right to pump is the key. And there's a group called the Edwards Underground Water District, or Edwards Aquifer Authority, that the state has given the regulatory right to control that. So if we go to the next slide, you can see here the areas in Shavano Park that are served by our water system and those areas that are currently served by SAWS. So in our Shavano Park water system, we provide water, but we do not provide sewage. So all the homes that are currently served by our water system have to have septic systems. How those got assigned is a long story, but it basically had to do with allocations that were given at a previous point back in the 1970s. And at that point, Shavano Park had very limited water supplies. We only had 6 wells in the upper part of the city, and they were able to produce a limited amount of water. Since then, we've had additional wells drilled south of our city, and they can provide more than sufficient water. So originally, Shavano Park did not seek to provide water to our unincorporated areas called extraterritorial jurisdictions, and those are now what are Shavano Creek, Bentley Manor, et cetera. So that's just a little bit of the background as to how we got to here and where we are. So our objective is to provide safe, reliable drinking water through efficient treatment of the water and to make sure that we meet or exceed the public health standards. Frank and his team, I tell you, do a remarkable job. Back when we had the winter of, I don't remember the year, but when everything froze, our water system did not falter. We had water throughout the entire cold spell. Some of the SAWS areas lost pressure. If your water pressure drops below a certain amount, you have to put out a boil water notice until you purified the system. We never had to go through that, but it was through the extraordinary work of our team of very dedicated employees that helped to make it possible. We do have diesel engines on one of our wells and on one of our water supply tanks, so that even if we lost power, we do have a way to provide water to our citizens. So that's just a little bit of the background. On the next slide, we're going to start looking at a quick comparison between SAWS and the Shavano Park Water System. Our city manager lives very close by, but he is a SAWS customer. He wishes he were a Shavano Park Water System customer, but he's not. So Bill, please.
Yeah, I think it's important. It's important to note that there's a lot of different water systems in the region. SAWS is the big one, so we're going to show some slides to SAWS, but Alamo Heights has a part of it, a few of the other cities, but only about half of the municipalities are serviced by their own selves, and only, as you saw on the map, only half of our city is serviced by us. And so I'm going to go over a couple key points here because how SAWS operates is not the same way that we can operate. I'll start over on the right column where the Shavano Park Water System, the rates that are established for your water bill are established by the City Council. The proposed water acquisition fees, we're going to talk a little bit more in detail. They're either a $37 fixed fee per month or a $30 with some tiers, and there'll be more slides on that. Operational scale, because we're a small municipality, we actually only have 683 residential properties that we serviced. And so we lack an economy of scale. We need to produce water to provide the revenues to operate at a minimal basis. And you'll see a little bit more about that later. For water rights and supply sustainability, as a small system, we must either purchase it, we must own it, or we must lease it on an annual basis. Most of it we own, and then occasionally we have to lease, and occasionally we have purchased some. Now, on SAWS, on the other hand, their rates are set by SAWS and approved by the City Council. They, if you've been watching the news, have proposed 37% increase in their total rates. Later, I'm going to show you some actual charts that do not even reflect the 37% increase. And so while SAWS is not most of you, and you don't really care what happens to SAWS, you just care about what happens, it gives you a perspective of what it takes to run a water system. Now, on the operational scale, there are large utilities serving the entire metro, and they're able to spread the cost around hundreds of thousands of customers. There are a large utility with an ability to long-term capital acquire water rights. I think that no telling how many acre feet of water rights they got when this first got established in the late 90s and the 2000s. But not too much detail in there other than you can't really, we're going to show comparison slides of SAWS versus Shavano Park, but it's harder in a way to run the Shavano Park water system than it is SAWS because of the lack of economies of scale. Some pros on SAWS: they've got a diversified water supply, large-scale infrastructure, predictable service. But their regional rates are significantly higher than Shavano Park. There's less local control. If you're a member of, we've got some folks here from Shavano Creek, you have very little control over what SAWS does, and their system complexity is much greater. The response times are much greater, much longer. Shavano Park, we have local control, economic rates for higher users, small system responsiveness. If you call us, we typically will respond in a day or two. Doesn't mean we always fix it in a day or two, but we're right there. We're able to provide lower water system operational cost. The cons are we're still dependent on the Edwards Aquifer, and the cost of water rights are significant, and they're going up. We'll show you that. And the smaller operational scale means that there's no economy of scales. So the Edwards Aquifer, which is represented by that map, many of you may know about it, but it's governed and regulated by the Edwards Aquifer Authority by law. And so when they established this, they dictated that on any given year, the maximum amount of water rights that could be withdrawn, that exist to be withdrawn, are 572 acre feet at the top. Yeah. Yeah, 572,000 acre feet. Some of you may not know what an acre feet is. I have to remind myself all the time, but it's about 325,000 gallons. We currently own 948 acre feet. We have 4 wells that pull out of the aquifer. At one point in time, there's 9 different well sites, but only 4 are operational right now. Just the statement of the obvious, EEA restricts the amount that every entity can restrict, that can pump based upon the water rights that you have. We can pump 3,000 acre feet if we want, but we will be heavily penalized, heavily charged. We'll be in the news. It's not feasible. I mean, we would be significant water violators if we did that. Here's the problem. Over the last 3 years, and I'm going to show you this year, we haven't had enough water rights to pump what we needed, and we've had to go out and purchase additional water rights for leasing purposes. So a lease, you have to lease it every year, and every year you have to enter into new agreements. So we've been able to do it, and it takes a lot of work, but we've been able to get it done. And so the issue, as we're going to talk about later on, is not about what we need to do next year or the year after or 5 years or 10. It's going to be how difficult is it going to be in 15, 20 years, in 30, and 50? And will we be able to maintain a water system if we don't have enough water rights? And if they keep changing the rules on what you can pump and what you can't, because that's what they keep doing. This is complex. I deal with this every month, every day, and so you're not going to become a subject matter expert on this, but the restrictions are governed by what stage you're in. So on the right-hand chart, you've got, gotta get the right pump. You got a stage 0 stable, and there's no water reduction. If you go to stage 1, you immediately get to a 20% reduction. From stage 0 to 1 is the biggest restriction that there exists. And then you can see that you go from 20 to 30 to 35, 40, 44. We've been in stage 3 most of the year, and that's 35%. We're now in stage 2. I'm going to show you another chart about that next slide. This kind of shows you just year to date for the last 201 days. We went from stage 4 to stage 3 to stage 2 to stage 3 to stage 2. That's the number of days in each stage. They track it by hour and by day, and every day there's a cumulative reduction. So right now we are already reduced 20%. If for some reason we went to stage 0 tomorrow, we would already be reduced to 20%. So the next slide is probably more useful. There's a part on the website where you can say, well, here's what the previous reductions were. How many days do you think you're going to be in stage 2, the remaining of the year, stage 3, stage 4, stage 5, and you can predict. And you can put any number in there you want. For the purpose of this briefing, I put in two different equations. Let's just say for the rest of the year, which is not likely because we're getting ready to go through the thick of summer, we stay in stage 2 for the remaining of the year. That's another 160 days. That 20% reduction will be almost 34%. If you stayed into stage 2 for 52 days and you went to stage 3 for 100 remaining days, you're going to be reduced 35%. Not a big difference, but this is pretty realistic right here. And so our 900 and something acre feet are going to be reduced significantly. Actually, we have less than that. We only have this year 870 because some of the water rights that we bought last year are in a conservative program that we won't actually get to be able to use for a year or two.
So let me add just one comment to that. This is calculated on a daily basis, but we're held to it on an annual basis. So pumping on days when we're in a low reduction doesn't matter. It just matters the total pumpage you've done in the year. But the amount that you're reduced is calculated on a daily basis, and then it all adds up to the end of the year. So, and the year for Edwards is a calendar year, which adds to the complexity as to how we have to manage things.
And it may be covered in another slide, but on wet years when you have a lot of rain and we don't have a problem, no restrictions, we don't have enough revenue to cover the expenses of the water system. That's the bottom line. We need dry years, we need revenues, reasonable revenues. And so your question is going to be, and your feedback is going to be, is what we're proposing reasonable on the grand scheme of things to be able to run this thing? And I'll show you some comparison to my water bill compared to yours in a minute. This is a historical water rights. Al, you and Tommy want to talk this?
Yeah, actually, Tommy was a mayor a number of years ago, and he had the foresight to purchase significant additional water rights, and he took a lot of grief for it. How did you do that, Tommy?
Well, thankfully, I had a good counsel with me when I was on there, and they helped me get through it, but everybody thought I was crazy, spending a couple $100,000 for some water rights. It's worth about $8 million now. So it was a good investment for our city. The water system is one of the city's best assets we have. But I've been in the water business for 30 years. It's never going to get cheaper, and we're never going to have more of it. So we need to be careful how we get it and what we do with it. But it's gone from now up to about $12,500 an acre foot. From 10 years ago, it was $4,000 an acre foot. So it's just going to get higher. So we have to plan to do something if we want to have water.
So on our water system, we're not going to have more customers. So the part of Shavano Park that is served by our water system is built out, essentially. There may be a couple of homes that change, but fundamentally it's stable, and we know how many customers we're going to have. The water rights, it's really interesting to watch, and I've been involved in this for almost 30 years. And the Edwards Authority keeps changing the rules. I remember when, if you had water rights, you were not charged Edwards fees unless you actually used those rights. They changed that, and now you're charged regardless of whether you use them or not. Used to, we could lease rights back to SAWS, who put them into conservancy, and we get money back each year. They quit doing that. So lots of rules change, but I've yet to see one that has changed that's been in our favor. And just to clarify one more thing. The difference between a lease and a purchase, a lease is a one-year agreement, and they have to be renegotiated each year. A purchase is a capital asset that you own forever. And we actually execute a deed, and it gets filed downtown. So it's just like buying mineral rights or oil rights. We literally buy those, and we own those. So in the future, if we had more than we needed, we could lease additional back to somebody else. So there are options on that. But as Tommy said, following over the number of years, the water rights have dramatically increased in both lease and purchase costs each year. So we keep reading that people are moving into the area. They're moving into not just San Antonio, but the areas around us that always also draw from the Edwards. We have additional businesses. So, for example, the Toyota plant is about to double in size, and there are other commercial customers that are using water. So we cannot in any way see any chance that the water rights are going to drop in value in the future. So the money we spend on water rights right now is an asset that the city owns, and if we ever need it in the future, we could either borrow against it, or we could actually, I mean, they could be resold, or we could lease water from them.
Just a couple points on this slide. In 2001, the city council authorized the purchase of up to several hundred acre feet. You don't go and find one person that's going to sell 300 acre feet. You have to negotiate with each individual owner, and that'll be the same thing that we have to do. But in 2001, they bought a lot of rights. We don't have the price. In 2002, they bought some. In 2003, that price there, the city bought 167 acre feet for $880, and that is a factual. I have the documentation and the deed from 2003. And then 2017 or 18, when I first got here, we bought 13 acre feet for $5,600 and change. Last year, we bought some for $10.50 and some for $10,300, $10,200, something like that. Most of the people that we talked to wanted it for $14,000. They're represented by lawyers. You know, we're not going to go out there and purchase a bunch of acre feet at once, even if we wanted to. It'll have to be negotiated. But, sorry. That's, you know, that's not going to change right there. Okay. Okay, so 150 acre feet, how do we get to that? Well, I mean, we could buy more or less, but 100 acre feet in a matter of restrictions when you're being reduced 30 to 40% only equals 150 acre feet only equals 100, 110 acre feet. And we know that costs vary by seller or agent. 10 to 14,000 is our estimate. I talked a little bit about this before. We bought some acre foot last year. We're thinking that 150 acre feet isn't going to solve our problem all the time, but it's going to put us in a lot better position if we can find the buyers and afford to do it. That's our objective. So this is an objective. So we said, well, what if we did 150 acre feet for $11,000? That's $1.65 million. Then if you looked at taking an internal loan from ourselves and then paying that loan back at the going rate, which is about 3.75 for a money market right now, 150 acre feet, which purchased at 1.65 at 3.75 for 5 years, is $365,000. And we did different scenarios, because whether it's 4%, 3%, 7 years, 6 years, what we came to grips with is we're going to need about $300,000 plus revenue to cover the majority of the purchase price if you wanted to repay it back in 5, 6, or 7 years.
That's per year revenue.
Per year revenue. It's a basis. That doesn't mean that's what these are the final terms, but this is what, you know, the scenarios showed us. And so what you then have to do is you have to look at what options. One option is that you have a fixed fee, which means you are certain to receive that funding on an annual basis. And we know there's 683 residential properties. There's a couple commercial properties too that will get charged, but there's 683. So if you charge a fixed fee, it doesn't matter what tier use they use, you're going to get the same amount of revenue. So what this chart shows you is a $36 fee provides about $307,000. that still doesn't cover the total cost of buying that, even if an internal loan, because some of that cost could be borne by the maintenance, the revenues that are received in the year. We're not trying to necessarily pay for it all. You got to get into the ballpark. You can see where that is. That's lower than this amount right here. So
just to clarify one thing, we're talking about borrowing. It would be the water system would be borrowing from the city's reserve, not from itself.
okay, so this was actually the second option considered by the Water Advisory Committee. The one that they are recommending is the tiered option, which is a $30 per month fee per resident. And then for only the tier 2, 3, 4, and 5 users, and that's the number of monthly bills that you get, that's the expected revenue, that the higher users will get this amount of money, and bring in this money, and then the total system will bring in this amount of money. Again, that still brings you to 307. And you got to realize that the estimated revenues will float based upon the weather and the demand. So if you have a real wet weather, and we've had real dry weather recently, so these figures are based upon droughts with high demand and a lot of water revenue. The other thing that Sauls has learned is the higher you charge, the less people will use. And the less people they use, the less revenue you get. So part of our problem is we need to get the revenue whether we use a lot or whether we don't use a lot. And so we looked at, this is like the 9th and 10th option. There were 9 and 10 options looked at over a 3-month period of time with the Water Advisory Committee. And they came up with a hybrid, because they considered at one point in time just a tiered option like Sauls has, or a fixed option, or a various different hybrids that existed in here. So none of these are perfect, but this provides some level of guaranteed revenue and an estimated revenue based upon the supply and demand. And again, you know that the more you charge, the less people generally will use, which means you're, in a way, that reduces the amount you depend upon on the aquifer, but the fact of the matter is the water system, doesn't matter how much you use, we require a certain amount of revenue every year, if that makes sense. It doesn't really matter. And that's the problem that we have that Sauls doesn't have. Sauls, basically, I don't know if you know this, they started charging drought surcharge fees, which brought all their usage down, which I fully believe is the reason why they have a 37% rate increase, because they're charging all the higher users which is forcing them to use less. And you'll see what I mean in just a minute, I think. Now, where do your water rates exist now? So again, you have tier 1 through 6. You're going to see in a minute that these prices are very reasonable. And all of our water users, I think it's above 85% or something like that, or right here in tier 1, tier 2.
74, I think it was.
Was it 74%? 74% of all the water users are here. So if you go back to this, 74% of the water users will get $30 a month fee. There'll be varying different degrees of fees potentially here. Okay. On top of that, there's a meter fee of $7 per meter. I think my meter fee for Sauls is $11 and something, maybe it's $14. There's a debt service fee which pays the debts that we have, the bonds that have been previously issued. And we have a very reasonable EEA pass-through fee of 50 cents per 1,000 gallons. That's right, here's where it talks about not 24% of the customers, but 24% of all customer bills are tier 1 users. So you might be a tier 1 user 8 months out of the year, a tier 2 user 3 months, and a tier 4, 1 month or something like that, depending on how much water you use in a given year. So majority of our folks are tier 2, which means they use less than 30,000 gallons.
Which Sauls considers to be excessive.
I'm sorry, what?
Said which SAWS considers to be excessive.
Excessive. So if you are a tier 2 water user, your bill is $54 to $148. If you're tier 1, it's $33 to $50 a month. Now, if you compare Saul's to Shavano Park, Saul's is in the orange line, Shavano Park is the blue line. What I attempted to show here is where the break-even line is. Not a lot of cost difference. At zero, there's a bit of a cost difference, but most users are right here. We're pretty comparable to Saul's, but you'll see that Saul's takes off very rapidly here. And that for the majority of our users here, you're saving a considerable amount of money, and that's that cost efficiencies that we provide for you all. On the big scale, it looks more like this, and this is not an exaggeration. This is where my water bills are, up into, I'm about 30,000 gallons. Mine are here at $400 to $600 a month, and yours is less than $200. I'll show you my bill because I copied my bill, and you'll see all my bills here in full disclosure right here. Saul's has added this drought fee. If you use over 20,000 gallons, it's $10 and something per 1,000 gallons over 20, and that adds up very fast.
So while the rate didn't go up as much, the drought fee is dramatic impact.
Yeah, Saul's will tell you they haven't raised their rates in 10, 12 years, but they keep raising all the other rates, not the usage rate. So it's all smoking mirrors in my mind, but that's just me. Water acquisition fees. That's kind of what Saul's calls water supply fees. Now, Saul's uses the water supply fees to purchase more water, to run the Vista pipeline, forget what the total name of it is, Vista Verde, the desalination plants, the aquifer supply reserve that they have, et cetera. And so our current fees are zero right here, this blue line. I didn't run a scenario for every tier and everything associated with that because, frankly, I put it together today, this afternoon, and I could have done more, but I'd use $30 right here. And you can see at 10,000 gallons, this is the Saul water supply fee up here. In fact, it's double the usage fee. You'll see in real terms in the next slide. And you might say, well, it doesn't matter what Saul's does. I got that, because all we're trying to do is run our water system so that the revenues meet the expenses. There is no profit. We don't give anything back to the city, nothing to the general fund. We have a small reserve, and there's a lot of challenges associated with that. This is my water bill. So in the month, I think it was of March, I used 5,000 gallons. And so my water bill was $85. My water supply fee was $11.65 right here. In the month of April, because that's when we hadn't had a lot of rain, it was mostly March, and I got billed in April. My water supply fee was $190.04. So that was only using 28,000 gallons, which it's tier 2. Many of you all use 20 to 28,000. Some of you may only use 5,000. But, even there, my bill in April was, $495. So, yeah, it's a big bill. I have 11 sprinklers system. I run my water only one time a week. I took one of my zones down, so I had 12. I went down to 11. I had their Saul's conservation guys come out, and they gave me all kinds of coaching. They put settings on my thing to minimize it. But if I run my water system one time a week for the iteration, mostly are 20 minutes per zone, it's over 5,000 gallons. So if I do it 4 times a month, that's 20,000 gallons. And then I usually use between 3,000 and 5,000 gallons if I don't do it. That's just perspective. Just to remind you, 28,000 gallons, my water supply fee is $190. I'm not happy about it, but it is what it is. Okay, so, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just going to say, one other big difference between us and SAWS is we trust our citizens to decide when and how they want to use their water. SAWS thinks they know better than all of us, and they'll tell you what day you can water, they'll tell you what hours during those days you can water, and they have a water police that come around and they give you citations, and they charge you penalties if they catch you watering outside those days or hours. So that's a big difference.
Yeah, so again, the bottom line, this is all about meeting future water needs. I kind of alluded to it before, but if we were just taking next year and this year, we could lease it for a lot cheaper. The proposed purchase of 150 acre feet is really looking out 15, 20, 30 years, trying to make sure we have enough water that we're going to be able to maintain a water system. If you can't provide the water, because even if you're willing to pay for it, if it becomes cost prohibitive to lease and no one's leasing it and you can't produce it, yeah, you could restrict some of the water. But there'll be a point in time, potentially, where the city doesn't have enough water, we don't have enough revenues to fix our aging water system, and then you're to an impasse. Do you sell the water system to SAWS and then you turn it over to somebody else and then work through that? You know, we have rejected that every single time it's come across, because we provide water significantly cheaper and at the same quality or better than the SAWS provides it. And you get a very responsive water system that you'll never get at SAWS. But that's what we're really trying to protect. So what the WAC has done is they are proposing and they're going to recommend fees for the city council approval. If city council approves it, they'll start collecting fees kind of initially. That will be put in a separate sub-fund for water purchases. There'll be a budget process that goes forward so that there's goals and objectives established in the budget. There'll be a specific target that's established in the budget for purchase. It doesn't mean it'll be done. What we typically do is we put advertisements in the paper. We send out notices to EEA that we're wanting to purchase, and we'll be looking for water right owners, and then we'll negotiate prices. And we've been pretty good at negotiating, but it's going to be difficult. Even if we had all this approved, this could take a year or two to do. And so the actual loan may not occur for a year or two, but the actual cost will start being incurred sooner than later. And
so the Water Advisory Committee thinks we're at a point similar to what Tommy was in when he made the decision to buy additional water rights. Not everybody saw the need for that. But fortunately for us now, we've saved a heck of a lot of money, and we've had options that we would not have had they not had the foresight and the willingness to look ahead and to purchase what they felt they were going to need in the foreseeable future. Yeah. So that's a key point to me.
And I would like to say this too. We can't buy 150 acre feet from one person usually. It's just not there. But we do have some citizens that live in Shavano Park that have some ranches in the aquifer that might have some water rights. If they felt real benevolent, they might want to sell it to the city at a good rate. So if you know anybody that has a ranch in the aquifer, and that might give, we don't need much, 10 here, 20 there, whatever. We just need to get some built up. So that's just a thought.
One last thing I say is, SAWS has an objective, and I wish I had done my homework a little bit better, to purchase thousands more acre feet. And that these new developments, that if you want to put a subdivision in, and you're a developer, SAWS says, and I don't have it exact, I don't know what the terms are, but you can read it in the paper. Yeah, I'll provide your water. You go get the water rights for your subdivision, You own them and transfer them to us, and then we'll provide your water service. So this is the demand that we're up against. And so earlier, it was just a bullet comment, but it's like we have a window of opportunity. We may think we should have bought it at 50% 10 years ago, but we have it, and it's pretty expensive, but we have a window of opportunity to do something. I'm not sure you're going to have that window in 10 years or 15 or 20 years because it would be too cost prohibitive. And so that's what this is all about. It's not about trying to get water for this year or next year or the year after or 5 years. It's trying to secure the future of the water system. And I think we're going to go into the general questions and answers discussion period of this. And Mayor Warner, you want to say something?
Yeah, let me add one comment real quick. If you're looking to try to figure out what Edwards level of restriction we're in, you really need to go to the Edwards website to figure that out, because what the TV says about SAWS levels is not the same as the Edwards. So right now, Edwards says we're at level 2. SAWS has level 3. So what you hear in the news is not necessarily exactly what the Edwards is doing. I'm sorry, go ahead,
And I've got one more comment on that. 'Cause back in the late 90s, early 2000s, we had almost 1,000 acre feet that we were allotted from Edwards Aquifer. And when they started the Aquifer Authority, then they came back and allotted us like 571 feet was all they, we were using 1,000. It wasn't costing us anything, but with no authority, that's all they were giving us. So that's why we had to buy water back then.
Yeah, and going to Tommy's comment, the first purchase was somewhere between $250 and $400 an acre foot. Think about that, and 25 years later, we're looking at $10,000 to $12,000. Water just costs a whole lot more than it used to. Now, for most of us, for the more senior among us, we're never going to see this crop come in. You know, we got enough water probably to take us to kingdom come. But we're going to be selling these homes to people who are much younger than us over time. And what we're buying is insurance. When they come into our community, they're going to know that they have the water that they want to have, and that they're going to be able to spend the money that they're going to spend on their lawns. And you guys have spent fortunes over your time in Shavano Park. They're going to be able to maintain those lawns. Think about how much it costs for somebody to put in a lawn. There are people in Shavano Park who have put in a 7-figure number to put their lawns in. Shavano Park is offering the opportunity for them to have that value. We're not saying, unlike San Antonio, where it'd be like, well, it's going to cost you a bloody fortune to have that lawn, but we don't mind collecting $10,000. Bill and I have talked to several citizens who are on the city of Shavano, the SAWS program, that are spending well over $1,000 a month to maintain their lawns. We could come back in with the water that we have and begin the same type of nanny regulation that the city of San Antonio imposes. Hey, we're going to come by, we're the water police, you can only pump so much. I love you guys too much to want to have a police force that's out there to regulate your water usage. And I look at this, and it's a lot like insurance to me. When you and I get ready to sell our homes, and we have this embedded value in your homes because you have water rights to go with the city of Shavano Park, I think that your house is a whole lot more valuable because your land is going to look much more like an oasis than a desert, because we live in the Chihuahua Desert. We live at the edge of the Chihuahua Desert. But we're able to maintain this piece of the hill country that we have, and to experience something like the artesian wells that were out in this part of the country 50 years ago. So we're going to open up for questions. Who's got the first question?
Bill mentioned 6 wells. Was one of those the wells that was, when there one sunk into the Bracken Shale at some point? Is that one of the wells that still exists?
There was a well that we put into the Trinity Aquifer a number of years ago. We were looking for alternatives to the Edwards, and we are not in a controlled portion of the Trinity Aquifer. We drilled a test well, then we drilled a real well. It turned out that the water was not of the quality that we had anticipated, and it turned out to be very corrosive to the equipment. The cost of that was extremely high. We have put that well in mothballs. It's still physically there, and it's on Wagon Trail, and it is in mothballs currently.
Is that what the service debt fee is on the current water
It's
bill?
part of it.
Okay, thank you.
But we talked to a number of geologists. As I say, we even drilled a test well. The water looked good. The initial tests were good before we pulled it into production and put in. We also were required by the TCEQ to mix the Trinity water with Edwards water. So that's part of the complexity. Yes, sir.
Okay, next question.
Yeah, good evening. I think one of you mentioned that the residential part was pretty much built out, but in a lot of jurisdictions, the high water users are commercial users. So I was curious if the commercial side of Shavano Park still has additional users that might show up.
Almost everybody that you think of as commercial is served by saws. All the area out along 1604 and along Lock Hill, Selma, all served by saws. The only couple of commercial that I'm aware of is the Southwestern Bell or AT&T facility over here, and maybe one other small one. They're negligible. The high water users are all residential.
Okay. Yes, sir.
And you don't expect any other further development in the area where Shavano Park Water serves?
The Shavano Park Water area is constrained, bounded, and basically all the lots in that, with maybe a possibility of a handful of exceptions, maybe 4 or 5 lots that don't have homes on them.
Okay.
It is true, however, that some homes are being sold and much larger homes are being built, and the new people moving in are higher water users than the people who were there previously. That is true. One other comment I guess I would make is having reliable water and adequate water actually adds value to your property. If you're trying to sell a property or a ranch or whatever, and you don't have adequate water, a lot of people are going to be reluctant to consider that.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for your great presentation. If I use 30,000 gallons a month on average throughout the year, from what I understand, I will have a fee of $30 additional each month. Is that correct?
That's correct.
For how long?
We are anticipating this will be 5 to 7 years, depending on how long it ends up having to take to recover. But the anticipation is 5 to 7 years.
And
We've-
part of the reason why it's not 20 years or so-and-so, because it's not truly a loan. There is, generally speaking, the city's investments and the assets we have, we try to keep liquid. So you try not to take your own assets and then enter them into long-term agreements. You can borrow money, and then you can then go long-term, and then you can take out debt, and you can do that. But it's a little bit different, and we actually have policies that regulate that keep the requirements for your weighted average of maturity under 1 year. So, it's not like, ideally, you could spread this over for 50 years, but you really can't because it's just not good practice, and we don't know what we're going to need that money for.
And if it graduates as I use more water, the fee, is that correct?
Yeah, can you go to slide 13?
That's not a huge amount unless you're on the very high end. So for example, if it's 15 cents a month, that tier has, 10,000 gallons in it. So that would be, I'm sorry, it has 20,000 gallons in it. So that would be 20 times 15, so that would be $3 additional.
Yeah, if you
That's
use,
the EA fee, and then if you happen to be in the tier 6, which was 100,000 gallons, your bill goes up $75 a month compared to Bill's bill, which was $190 for his utilization.
At 28,000 gallons. You're in tier 6, you're not in 28,000 gallons.
no, but
I'm saying
in
at
tier 2, if you
100,000.
use 30,000 gallons, you're paying $30. I paid $190 for 28,000.
That's correct, that's what I'm saying. So the $30 is on every bill up there.
Yes.
The circle to the right is an add to the 30 for everything over.
Correct.
That's correct.
But I'm going back to Bill's bill, where if you hit tier 6, your 190 is not 190 anymore. It would be a lot more than that.
Yeah. Well, 60,000 gallons is $500.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, we're at $75 a month if you're in tier 6.
Right.
Well,
Sounds
wait
like a
minute,
good
I'm
deal
not-
to me.
Yeah, hello, thanks for the presentation. Do I push on the button?
No, it's okay.
Oh, yeah, what's not clear to me is how you compare SAWS to the Shavano Park water bills, because SAWS includes the sewer, is what I understand, and
Yeah.
we don't have that. We have the, septic systems, as we all have, and there's a significant amount of cost during the year to run these. Some people pay more, some people pay less, depending on if they have a maintenance contract or not. But I don't see how you can directly compare those two
Yeah.
tier, the rate
You're only using the
structures.
size, the water part.
So I have a SAWS bill right here. On the back of it, it details all the charges that they have. And there is a sewer service fee that was zeroed out on all these. This does not include for SAWS any of their sewer fees at all.
And it's just for comparison, but his comparison he made was water to water. It did not include the sewer for SAWS. But that is certainly a difference.
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, well, see, my sewer service charge is $33. I did not include that in the water service fee part of that. And that's based upon how much I use in the winter. So usually it's like $20, but because I watered more this winter, they tricked me into having to pay more for the rest of the year just because I watered once or twice in the winter. SAWS is not my friend. I've written 2 letters to the editor to SAWS, and they drive by my house looking for me to violate every single week.
Okay, y'all will be happy to know I'm not going to talk about desalinization. So, this is becoming more and more just kind of sinks in that it's a commodity, it's a valuable commodity. An acre foot of water is now 3 ounces of gold apparently, and when Tommy bought it, phenomenal price. We've been getting somewhere between 12 and 17% return on that. If you look at the $11 million value of our, water rights in Shavano Park, and so I think this is good. I guess my question comes down to if they're just short of 700 residents, and I did hear Al's comment about people moving in might use more water.
Yeah.
Okay, they might use more water, but ultimately these are residents. If we're bringing in businesses, I think it's an easy case. Let's try to make sure that we've got some real, strong stability on, additional water. But these are residents, and we're being asked, the 700 of us to spend thousands and thousands of dollars over, several years for these very expensive gold-priced acre-feet of water. And yeah, I would go back to when Tommy bought that. You said we had 1,000 acre-feet that Edwards Aquifer took away half, which doesn't surprise me. I don't think that's the best organization we're dealing with. But why are other than maybe we can talk to some climate changes or something, why are we all using much, much more water and we require to spend, millions of dollars now when the decision was made 20 years ago to bump up our owned water rights to something that was good for 700 residents, and now 20 years later we have 700 residents. What has changed that would cause us to feel that it's reasonable to take on this additional debt? And then my second question really is, have we looked at other options like a direct connect to SAWS to sell back when we're not using all our water, and maybe other ways to gain funds so that we're not having to borrow money? We have a very valuable water supply that we could do something with ultimately.
Let me answer the second one first. SAWS is not overly cooperative in working with smaller cities and with us having our individual water systems. I probably would rather just leave it with that comment, but they're not interested in interlocal agreements on water, to be honest.
And going back to EAA, when we bought this additional water, we didn't have the restrictions that we have now. And they keep changing restrictions every year and taking more rights away from us. So we still, 943 this year was down to what, almost under 600 acre feet that we could use. So if EAA wouldn't keep taking their rights away from us, we'd be all right.
And the other thing is, if you look at the last 3 years, we've had to purchase or lease additional rights because we did not have. So that's real experience as opposed to a forecast that was made a number of years ago.
Can I want to address I know there's some more questions. I got here in 2013 in the fall. We didn't have a public works director. The Water Advisory Committee had not been meeting for effectively a year. There was a subcommittee that was working through this. As I worked through the budget initially, I was a new guy. I went through this. It took me about a year, but I'm like, why are we leasing 400 acre feet? And you can lease for 5 years. We had a series of like 6 stair-step leases that were 5-year periods. We were spending thousands and thousands of dollars for water that was being leased on a 5-year thing. At the time, there was plenty of rainfall, and so we weren't using all of our water rights, but we weren't pulling in the revenue we needed, and we were just paying someone for water rights we didn't need. There was a time period where we said, look, what if we took the water rights that we're leasing and we just purchased them on an annual basis and worked through that? So we started in 2018 doing that. We got 13.35 acre feet. But then in the years after that, we didn't have enough revenue to go out there and to purchase more. And we had let our leases go so that we could have enough revenue to go. That answers that part, the first part of that question. When I first got here, we were leasing 400 extra acre feet because we recognized we need the need, but it was just pouring money down a drain, so to speak. The second piece is we have an interconnection. We have an interconnect with SAWS. And 30 years ago, we had an agreement that in an emergency, we could use SAWS water, and we had a very reasonable rate schedule. About 8 years ago, our lease, 20-year lease ran out. I went to negotiate it with SAWS, and they wanted to provide water to us as if we were a single residential customer, which means after the first 18,000 gallons, you're now paying the highest rates, all those water supply fees. And so, we use somewhere, how many gallons a month do we use, Frank? Just a ballpark figure. Yeah. 30 to 60 to 90 acre feet, multiply that out, 30 million gallons, over 30 to 50 million gallons a month on the average. Could you imagine that rate schedule that and it wouldn't be very long. It would be 3 to 5 days. It's like gouging us on a hurricane. If we're in an emergency, that's what they were doing, and they would not budge off of that. So that's not an alternative.
Thank you. I was thinking $30 a month is a small fee to ask to maintain our freedoms. I think that comes to about $360 a year, and I don't want to minimize some of the elderly or people on fixed budgets. I know sometimes it's very hard for every single dollar, but maybe in those cases there could be a benevolence fund for those people who apply for that could be helpful for them. But I'm just thinking for the amount of cost, I will save money paying $30 a month compared to paying the rates that you're talking about from SAWS. But maybe may take 2 months to make up the whole amount that I would have paid in a year. So, I mean, I think when you look at this, it's wonderful to maintain our freedoms, and that's a reasonable cost, in my opinion, to be able to do that.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My family and I just moved here about 2 months ago.
Welcome.
So this is great. So I do have just 2 questions. Forgive me if you've answered them. But after the loan is paid off in 5 to 7 years, will the water acquisition fee automatically expire? Or would any continuation require a new vote? And then my next question is, how much has the city spent leasing water rights in recent years? And after how many years does purchasing these rights or fee become less expensive than continuing to lease?
The end part, we anticipate it will, but it will depend on the city council at that point in time. They will need to change the water rate. That's the first part.
Yeah, the city council makes the decision every single year. As far as what the future is, if you can tell us that, we all have a stock portfolio that we would like your help with, because we have absolutely no idea what those water rights are going to be worth on a lease basis. Now, when I worked with Langley and Benak, we were doing the 5-year leases out there, and Bill was actually paying for 5-year leases, but we were probably getting, for our clients, a much better deal than Shavano Park was getting. We were getting about $1,200 an acre foot for an annual lease, and that was when water was $5,000 an acre. Now, I think Bill is going to tell you that we were paying a whole lot less as a city on our 5-year leases, I think in part because we were doing it through the EAA affiliation.
Yeah, there was affiliation. It was a regional water advisory thing, and EEA on our behalf was going out and finding water for us to lease and do that thing. What we haven't sorted out was the exact cost when we might say a loan takes over. But we've done some due to froms in various things, and we have set in the city council budget process, okay, we're going to pay this back in 5 years, and so we divide it by 5, and at the end of that falls off. There was one thing that we went 5 years, and then we extended it 1 more year, but we have not done it continuous. And so at the end of the 5 years, it will fall off. And so unless there is a new action that says we have to buy something new, it should fall off. And this city council is pretty good at saying these are the terms, and they establish it in the council meeting in the minutes, and so it's recorded.
And I'd like to say something. We've always ran the water board since we've been around here more like a co-op, even though it's not. So we try to keep all our expenses as in check and not go overboard, so we can maintain the water rates and the water system. But like I say, it's kind of like a co-op. We don't gig it to you all the time.
So one of the requirements for being on the Water Advisory Committee is you must be using the Shavano Park Water. So we're all in the same boat. So our objective for each one of us individually is to try to keep it the best balance we possibly can. I don't know if I could give you an exact number on where it breaks even, But by owning it, you have a lot of certainty. By leasing it, you have to hope that they're going to be available, and you have really no control over how much they're going to escalate. So that probably was a bigger factor for me than the others.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, if nobody else has any questions, we really, really do appreciate y'all being here this evening and having your input. Council will be meeting on Monday, the 27th. If you have any more questions, it will be a discussion item, and we'll be putting it to a vote at that time. There are two options that have been listed there. One of the things Tommy mentioned about the way the water system works, it's a lot like a co-op. And a co-op works where we got to provide all of the grain opportunities or the cotton ginning opportunities or all of the electricity that Pedernales needs, or that we've got to provide telephone service to everybody. And at the end of the day, we're not making a profit. We're not putting that money in the bank, and we're not paying large executive fees. In fact, we're not paying hardly any fees. We pay for 3 employees through the water system, and that's what the 700 of us that are getting water have 3 people that are supporting us. And of those 3 people that are supporting us, sometimes the other people in the water committee come forward, the other public works employees work with us, and sometimes the people that are being paid by the water system are supporting the general public works stuff. But at the end of the day, it's neighbors helping neighbors, neighbors making decisions for neighbors. And for you and for me, for those of us who are a little bit older and have a little bit more gray hair, I think that this is something that maintains the values of our properties. And for me, that's important. I hope it's important for you. We'll see what council does on Monday night. If you have any questions, in the Roadrunner every single month, you're going to see my telephone number in there. I am here to take your telephone calls. Thank y'all so much for being with us tonight. Y'all have a wonderful evening.
Yeah, I'd like to add one more thank you for everybody. And one of the really neat things about Shavano Park is it's a small city, and I believe it's responsive to those people, those of us who live here. If you're willing to come out like you did tonight, which we really do appreciate, you have a chance to hear what's going to happen before it's locked in concrete, and you have a chance to provide input. And we sincerely appreciate that. So thank you very much.